Hello guys, Reza here. We are going to continue with our Marvelous Designer for Beginners series. This is lesson 2, and in this session we are going to focus on 2D patterns. We're going to talk about how to create them and how to modify them. So let's get started. In the previous video, we talked about the user interface and how to bring a geometry from your preferred 3D application into Marvelous Designer. The reason I'm showing you this is because I want us to kind of sanity check the measurements. So this table is 680 cm tall and this one is 750.4 cm tall. I'm going to select these two. Actually, I'm going to shift click on this little block, which is probably going to be used for a pillow as well. And I'm going to export them into Marvelous Designer. And here we are inside Marvelous Designer. If you're unsure about the steps, make sure to check the previous video as I already talked about how to bring an object. Now I've even gone ahead and named them and gave them some material, some roughness values. This guy is metallic, so I gave this guy metalness, low roughness value. So we're all ready to go. So with regards to 2D pattern tools, we have few attributes in 2D pattern window. You can see as soon as I bring the model, I can see the silhouettes on the model here. So let's explore 2D patterns and see how we can bring them. We have external 2D patterns and internal 2D patterns. The external 2D patterns are here. So if I hover my mouse, I have polygon, rectangle, and ellipse. And internal ones in the bottom right next to it. So internal polygon line, internal rectangle, internal ellipse, and I've got one extra one dart. The reason there is no internal in front of it because we do not have external dart. There's just one type of dart and the functionality of it is just to make hole in the fabric. Now let's start with the external one, and I'm gonna go and start with the easiest one. I can free form draw by click and drag to create my cloth. When you free form draw, if I hold down shift, I can actually make it proportionate. So from rectangle to a quad. Not only that, shift allows me to see the measurements. If you don't drag and just click on shift, you can see the measurements in cm or m, and if as soon as you move your mouse, you make the fabric proportionate. So I'm basically changing the rectangle to a quad now. If you let go of the mouse, you create your fabric and it gets created approximately on the same location on top of the table. Now here's the cool thing. If you want to move it, you can just click on transform pattern and you can move it here, but you may realize as soon as you move it, it doesn't move that in the 3D space. So something to be mindful of. Just because you create it in the right place doesn't mean that you can move it via 2D pattern. To move this in the 3D space, you actually need to press W and move that in the 3D space. And again, we already talked about unified gizmo W to bring the move tool in the 3D space, of course Q just to deselect. Let's create this one more time. This time I'm going to hold down Control and it creates it from the center. Let go of the mouse and create. I'm going to delete that. There's another nifty trick to that as well. I can actually, without doing anything, just simply click. And when you click, you can actually put in numbers if you have a measurement. If you want to follow a brief and you've been given a measurement, you can actually put down here. You can link them. So width and height, you can go with, let's say, 400 millimeter if you want. You can have more than one instances. You can have two and say, all right, I just need to have more interval, which is going to create distance between them. And you can create an angle and say, instead of having 90 degrees, I want to have 45 degrees. So it creates that 45-degree angle between two shapes. And you just simply press click. Something simple as that. Now I'm going to delete that. This time I'm going to go to rectangle and just create a big one right here. I'm going to bring this cloth here into position. I can use Alt left mouse button to orient it in here. You can actually move it to the side, or I can move it even a bit higher so it's not going to clutter the scene as much. Now I'm going to go to 3D scene. To have our first simulation, I'm going to go into that arrow. We have fast simulation, which is GPU, normal, which is the default, and fitting, which is the most accurate and takes the longest. Processor intensive, I don't suggest that. So I'm going to go with normal, click, and it does the trick. How cool is that? Now we have this option here, quality render. Feel free to enable it. So disabled, enabled, disabled, enabled. Doesn't really do much, but if the graphics card allows you to have that, something to add to the quality of the representation of the cloth, why not? I'm going to very quickly go over ellipse as well. Pretty much the same deal. You can do freeform. Control Z to undo. You can start with control. So when you click, you start from where you click. You can combine it with shift to get a perfect circle. Again, very similar to rectangle with a control Z, or you can simply click and that gives you diameter, and of course it gives you radius as well, which you can make it proportionate or not. I'm just going to go with diameter and say, all right, probably going to have maybe 800. Let's go with 900. And again, the same rule applies. If you want to replicate, we can have two shapes, right? You can give them angle, you can give them distance if you want. In that case, I don't want to. I'm going to go with 1000 just to round the whole thing. Create my cloth. And again, the same deal. W, bring this little guy down, move it to the position. And with the fabric selected, I can just click on simulate. Beautiful. Now, common question I get a lot is, how can we undo simulation? Some people press Control Z, and that's just really a bad idea. What I suggest is a shortcut, which is Control F, which does the trick beautifully. Or if you don't want to use it, I can actually select this one, for example. If you don't want to use shortcut, you can just right click on it and go reset 3D arrangement. You can see Control F is right in front of it, so I suggest that you guys memorize the shortcut, which is a lot easier, but that's how you do it. If I select both of them, I can actually simulate both of them at the same time. Now, the last option that we have is polygon. Again, same deal goes with polygon. I can start clicking. I can hold down shift to go straight a line. So I can do that and create my fabric. You can actually go ahead with your work and create your second point, and then hold the left mouse and drag to create a Bezier curve and add to what you already have, like so. And that's for sort of freeform organic model that you have at any point of time. If you feel like that, something went wrong, I just need to go back one step, you don't need to delete the whole thing. Just press delete on the keyboard and it goes one back. Now it goes one back and it goes 1 point back, and you can continue at any point that you want. So very, very handy. If I right click, I get a few extra options as well, which is pretty cool. I can actually mirror my creation now. In local axis, you can go with x-axis or y-axis to be more specific, but it looks at the origin and the lines that you have at the center of your scene and calculates it that way. So I can actually create something identical. I can hold down Shift to be like that. I honestly don't know what I just made, but you got the gist. You got the mirrored side showed in blue and the original side showed in yellow strokes. Then you can select on the transform. You can actually go ahead in the border, hold down Shift and drag it down a little bit. You can just reposition it in your 2D pattern. I can do the same thing with my 3D pattern. I can just rotate it in X-axis. I can select the model and simulate it. Simple as that. Now at any point of time, you can actually go in here and make some changes, but we're going to talk about changes in the next chapter. Let's reset all three. I'm going to walk you through internal polygon lines, which is very similar, so I'm going to be super quick with that. I'm going to press Control F on this. I'm going to select the circle, press Control F on this. I'm going to select the quad and press Control F on this to reset the simulation. Probably going to reposition this guy a little bit like so. That's much better. Now, internal 2D patterns actually need an external 2D patterns to begin with, which we already have. And what it does, it creates pattern on top of it. As an analogy, it's like having a pocket already on a shirt. For example, I can use this first one and say, you know what, I already have an external pattern. Let's create an internal ellipse. And the way it works is identical to external patterns. So Control to draw from the center, Shift to be proportionate. At any point of time, you can click to get extra options if you want. So I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I'm going to start with Control and Shift, start from the center and make it proportionate and let go of the mouse. And then all of a sudden, you have an external stitching that is happening on top of your cloth. Same deal with rectangle. So I can go and start from the center using Control, hold down Shift to keep it proportionate. You know, at any point of time, if you feel like you need to move this or nudge this to the side a little bit, you can always do that. I can just go over here and nudge it back just a tad to make it look better. Same deal with polygon. Create something. The drag with Bezier also works. Delete to go one level back also works. So pretty much the same thing. One new tool that we have is Dart, which is pretty neat. Now Dart allows you to create holes. So if I go in here onto this little rectangle here, I can just create Dart like so. I can create one in here. I can select the move tool, bring it exactly to the same location. With the Dart selection, you can even click and use numerical values if you want, but that's pretty much what this does. And you can see we have two holes in there. So I'm just going to select all three with the internal patterns in them and simulate. And you can see you get some definition on the around the edges, and you can see the holes that we just made on the fabric. Now we know the functionality of internal 2D patterns. Let's see how we can bring them to use when we have a fabric and we would like to basically add to the details of the fabric. I have the same scene. I have a simple scene with a simple quad on the top and a rectangle on top of that. If I just go ahead with the simulation and just drop them in, nothing too surprising. You can see that I get both layers working beautifully. So I'm going to select the yellow rectangle, go Control F, and I'm going to select this one and press Control F. And you can see that I have two internal rectangle lines on this patch right here. Now I would like to simulate one cloth or one fabric at a time, and you will come across that scenario a lot. For example, you want to create a pillow, and then you want to create a pillow case, something that we probably will touch on later. But in that scenario, it's always good to freeze the outer fabric and just focus on one fabric at a time. The way you do it is actually fairly simple. You select the fabric, you right click on it, and you go and apply freeze. Control K is something that I use a lot to freeze at any point of time. If you want to unfreeze, you just go and unfreeze, and again, same shortcut applies. Control K, freeze, and unfreeze. You may have noticed if I just freeze it, it turns blue or cyan color. So it's actually good now. I can just focus on one fabric at a time, that this one stays put until I unfreeze it. I'm going to press Control F on it to bring it back to the position. Now let's focus on how we can make use of these internal lines. So if I press A or transform pattern, select shape 2 and shift select shape 1, we have within property editor, we have a rollout called fold. Now the objective of this rollout is to create a pressing effect. So it actually presses on the sewn part of the pattern. So perfect scenario to add details. If I simulate and zoom in a little, I'm going to go to here, geometry display, and I make sure that the show internal lines is off, so you can turn it on and off to kind of see the effect more clearly. I'm going to zoom in just a tad. If I go ahead and increase the fold angle to something like 360 and start increasing the fold strength, you can see we are getting some really interesting patterns. I can actually deselect to see what type of result I'm getting. It's actually pressing on the sewn part of the pattern. I can actually select this one and change a different value. You can go inward or outward. So if I go outward for this one, which is 0, you can see one of them goes, if I zoom in, probably that's a better angle, one of them goes outward, the other one goes inward. So really useful, and again, you can kind of play around with that and have sort of different effects. Very useful, very useful. So I'm just going to basically make this one also 360-degree angle and intensify the fold strength to something like that. And you can see right off the bat, I mean, it's not much, it adds something to the pattern. So it's just better than just a simple fabric with no details. We will practice on different scenarios where you can add tons of effects using these internal lines. Now with that out of the way, also let's see how we can make use of editing tools in 2D pattern window, this window right here, to just tweak our internal and outline lines and customize the look and the shape of our 2D patterns. Now, before I talk about edit points, there are a few things, they're fairly simple, but I thought I would just run this by you guys so there's no question about selection. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. So you probably know by now that selection is letter A on the keyboard, and this icon is the icon for it. So if you want to select the patches, you press A and start clicking on your patches, or hold down Shift adds to your selection, so you move these two at the same time. Now another thing is moving and rotating and scaling, right? Very straightforward. Now at any point of time, if you are moving, if with the left mouse button held, if you click on the right mouse button, you get a window for more accurate value. And this applies to rotation, to scale, and to move as well. So if I move this with the left mouse button held down, if I click on the right mouse button, I get a bit of a hint how to move. Right mouse button, how much rotation I want. Again, left mouse button held down, click on right mouse button. What would be the percentage for me to scale down or scale up the object? Another tip is how to convert from marquee to lasso, and that's very simple. You just double click on the negative space, double click, and all of a sudden you have lasso instead of marquee selection. So marquee select, double click, it turns to lasso selection where you can kind of draw your selection and select your object. Again, not 100% sure if that's something that you want to do, but knowing it can be quite useful. Now let's see how we can edit points. I'm going to create a rectangle really quick, bring it on top of the middle table. I can actually move that on top of the middle table avatar as well, so you know what I'm doing. I'm going to create some internal points as well. So I'm going to go to polygon and click and enter. Now if I go and simulate, you can see I've got some patterns, and that's a very simple patch that I have. I'm going to go and select my cloth and press Ctrl F to revert the simulation. Now let's start with this menu, edit pattern. Now with edit pattern, you can select segments and move them. I'm going to undo. You can select points and move them, both internal and external. As you can see, as I said in my lesson 1, both viewports are linked. So whatever you do on one side, you can see it on the other side. So I can actually move that one here, and you can see change the adjustment of the internal lines as well. So fairly straightforward. You actually reposition points using edit pattern. You can do that with marquee select as well. You can double click, as I said, and have that lasso selection as well, and move them all in one go. So that's what edit pattern does. You just change the position of the curves after you create them. Now, while I'm on this edit segment mode, let me show you a few tricks. So Alt middle mouse to adjust my screen. If you right click on each point, you can actually see a few other points. If you right click on each segment, you can actually see some very useful pointers. So let's actually go through some of them. I'm not going to cover all of them, but just some of them. First one that I do use a lot is offset as internal. It kind of eliminates a little bit of repetition if you would like to create offset. If you basically would like to bevel a line, it allows you to do that. If I, I'm going to select all 4 and right click and offset as internal line. And if I do that, I'm going to zoom in. You can see that you can change the amount of offset. I can just offset it by 50 mil. I can offset this by 100 mil, and that kind of is not going to work for us. So I'm just going to offset it by, let's say, 20 millimeter. And number of offsets, you can have 2, 3, 4, how many you want. It doesn't really matter. And actually it offsets it. You can extend it, and you can see what extend does. It's actually 2 tools in one tool. We have another tool called extend, where it actually eliminates all the external lines that go beyond each curve. So tidying up your internal lines, but I'm just going to leave it as off and go OK. And you can see the pattern applies. Now, if I go and select all the internal lines and right click on it, you can see we have extend trim. Trim to internal lines actually is going to cut all the leftovers that we have after the intersection. If I come in here and zoom in, and you can see I'm going to go extend to internal lines, it's going to kind of take care of that for us and remove all the leftovers after each intersection and actually creates a point as a result, which is really, really neat. Now I'm going to undo to show you the different another mode. If I go extreme, if I go now extend trim to pattern outline, it actually is going to continue it all the way until those points reach the border of our external pattern, like so. I can even go in there, select these lines and say, well, could you please add points to any intersection that you see, and then you can add points at those intersections. So these are all the options that are available to you. By the way, just a quick tip, it's better to make modifications like this while you're in reset mode. Don't do it when you already have the simulation. It just adds a bit of lag or slowness to your computer. Now I can go ahead and simulate that, and you can see the pattern works for us beautifully. So while you can use this edit pattern tool, right clicking also gives us some really, really nice options to play around with. At any point of time, you can select a point, you can add a point. So just to clean up, you can always select and delete individual points if the situation calls for it, or you can go in here, select those points and select those points and just go extend them to pattern outline and connect them to the edges if you want. So you can see very, very intuitive, very straightforward, and that's basically what edit pattern does. Now, the next tool is transform point segment, and the only difference between edit pattern and transform point segment is it allows you to actually rotate your selection and scale your selection at the same time. So if I select these guys, I can move them. We already talked about them, but with the same selection, if I go transform point and segment, you can see now I can actually change the scale. I can go in there and change the scale, add a little bit of skewness to the whole thing. You can hover your mouse on this dot and actually rotate your selection if you want. Probably not a best example, this one, but again, this is something that is available to you for both internal and external points. You can actually do that. A few things that you can do, for example, in here, if I go in there and say, all right, I'm just going to add a little bit of patch in here, and then I go with transform points and segments, I can actually select this segment and select this segment and right click on it and say, well, merge them. And you add that to your selection. Simple as that. And again, you can see it goes back to what I said to begin with, that if you're making modifications, it's always good to just simply press Control F and then take it from there. So when you add to your selection using merge, you are actually resetting your fabric. So I need to go in there and I need to rotate this guy a little bit and move it down and then simulate it again. So that's a type of thing that you're getting. By the way, it probably is a good time to talk about this icon. This allows you to pull the fabric, kind of enhance the accuracy. But as you can see, this is a really neat trick to bring the fabric to position if you want, if the point is stuck. So very, very useful, this icon right here. Another thing that is very useful is if I right click on here, you can actually convert this into a curve. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm just going to press F to reset that and move it a little bit on top of the table that I have. So if I right click here, I can convert this to a point. I can convert this to a point. You cannot convert all four corners into curve points. So if let's say I want to just select all of these guys and convert them to a curve point, you get an error that says one should remain as segment point. So If you really want to turn everything into a curve point, then create a circle, because that's what it does. And again, I can just hit simulate and you get a slightly different result. I'm going to go edit curvature. Now edit curvature creates curvature on the segment. So I can select a segment and just move it to add a curvature to what I have. Very useful when you create t-shirt, when you create tablecloth. And again, it basically mainly functions on each segment. If I go to edit curve point, you probably have noticed what this does. This does the exact same thing, but on the points. So I'm just going to undo a bunch of times to go back to where I was. Now this time I'm going to select smooth curve. Now smooth curve does the exact same thing as edit curvature, but instead of focusing on these segments, it actually focuses on the points. So you can click and drag on each point and move your mouse to left and right, and you add curvature to each point. So again, I'm going to select, left mouse button hold, drag to get to that point. Like that. So very, very simple, very, very straightforward. The way that this works is actually pretty awesome. You select, you drag, and you let go of the mouse and you create different shapes. Simple as that. I can go ahead and simulate that one as well. And you can see that we are getting a squarish shape as a result. All right, next one on the list is add point split line. Now the functionality is pretty straightforward. Basically, you can add a point or points based on the measurements that you have. I can hover my mouse on each segment and you can see the indication. You can see both sides. Then I'm playing around with the figures. Now, instead of clicking and adding a point, I tend to just right click. The good thing about that is it gives you three options. Split into two lines, and it says, all right, one line is 619 and the other line, the length is 626. Usually the longer line is indicated by blue color, the shorter line is indicated by the yellow color. And you can see the ratio as well. You can play around. If I bring this over here so you get to see both numbers, you can actually play around with those numbers and you can see a live update. If you wish to just nudge this point a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, and you can see the measurements. You can split by length. Let's say this is 600, 600, 1200. Let's say I want to have 400 for each length. You can see you create now 400 and the remaining can be divided in by number of segments. For example, if you want to have two segments, each 400, you just go from number of two segments to 3. All of a sudden you get 400, another 400, and again another leftover, which is 446, 3 segments. Or you can pick uniform split and say, all right, whatever length you have, equally divided by 2, which is usually my thing. I really like the accuracy in the third option. It says, all right, 623.2 is going to be the exact division, which is equal. You can just add more segments, 3, then 415 would be the distribution, so on and so forth. So very, very handy, simple as that. Next is to go to /spread. Choose a segment and you can see the representation is there, and click and click. then you select a side and drag it. Now it's not going to separate it, it is going to extend it. So if I click, drag, and let go of the mouse, you can see the shape is now getting updated. I'm extending the cloth that I have. You can sort of repeat the same thing. Go in here and click, and this time I'm going to left mouse button on this side and just drag it to the right, and you can see I'm extending both sides. Obviously that doesn't work with what I have as internal polygon, but at least you get the gist. If you want to extend your cloth without merging or adding another patch to it, that's how you do it. Now let's go to the very last one, which is actually a fun one, and that is, if I click on it, is trace. By the way, probably it's worth mentioning that some of these guys can be accessed via here. So the shortcut for trace is the letter I on the keyboard, but you can also go to 2D pattern and trace is here. You can see letter I on the keyboard. You can go to create, and we have polygon, rectangle, ellipse, and all the internal lines and dart. You can go to edit and have access to the rest of the pattern tools to modify them, including selection. So transform pattern just to select a piece to be able to move it, rotate it, so on and so forth. Now let's go back to trace. Now what trace does, it's actually quite interesting. If you like a pattern or even a line and you would like to sort of trace over it and in a sense duplicate it, you can certainly do that. With trace, you can, with the line selected, you can actually select the whole thing and then hover your mouse on these segments. So you don't want to click on the negative space, you want to still be on those selected areas. Right click and you go trace a pattern. So what it does, it actually traces the pattern that you like. You can even have it as an external or outline patch. I can just move it outside the rectangle and left click to release, and all of a sudden I get a separate patch which resembles the internal polygon, and that can be basically something that I use separately. So I can go to, I can press W, move it down, and I can simulate it. So very fun that if you like a pattern, you may receive a project from a colleague, from another person who works in the same department, and you really like that design, you can actually take it out as a separate cloth and use it as an outline or a cloth and fabric. You can even select individual lines and do the same thing. So I can hold down shift and select, let's say, these two, and I can right click and trace it as an internal shape, and you can see this is now a separate internal line. So I can actually select this arrow, move it down a little bit, and create an interesting shape. So a lot can be done here using trace, and it allows you to create interesting shapes. If you think about, all right, a very stylish pocket design and you would like to actually follow the same contour, yes, one way is to offset the line, another way is to actually select it and trace it and reposition it using transform pattern. All right, that's a quick look at what patterns do and how to create them using this menu right here, and how to edit them using this menu right here. Obviously we have internal lines, which is this menu. So I think one video to cover these three windows. Hope you find this one useful. Let's move on to lesson 3 and see what is waiting for us to explore.